And welcome to the Everyday Board Game Podcast with your host, Daniel.
And Daniel.
Daniel, I waited for the cue that time. Aren't you proud?
Yeah, it's only taken us how many weeks now?
Um, what year is it again? Hold on. This is the end of October 2023. I think we started at roughly 2021. We're not too far away. No, anyway, we're practicing some new stuff. We're getting to some new things, and even you found some cool stuff that you were showing me right before the podcast.
Did I now?
Did you? I mean, they might be for future episodes or past episodes. Or they're for past episodes, but for future episodes from technically the dating of right now.
Oh yeah, we've already recorded it.
Regardless of what we're saying. Anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. We have another top 8 debate for you. Our big series, our big timer. This is the stuff that dreams are made of. You ready for this, Daniel?
Yeah, and this is also the start of our next cycle. We tend to like to do stuff, especially around the holiday season.
That's right.
Our last cycle was all about the spooky.
All about the spooky.
I'm still wearing it because we're recording this right before Halloween. In fact, we're recording on a Monday because, tomorrow's Halloween. So.
That's right.
But this is our Thanksgiving cycle, so time to spend with your family, either food related or stuff like that. Christmas, we're going to be doing like another cycle where we're going to be talking about like the holiday games that we like playing, or do a top 8 debate that deals with something holiday or that kind of thing.
Once we figure it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, of course, that leads us into our new thing we're going to be doing. We're moving all our stuff to the best of the year and stuff like that to January. This way, once we go through the full year, we just do that cycle there in January. That leads us to our last basically set off in February, and then the new season starts up in March. So we're actually pretty booked out.
Yeah, we are. And so I called you the other day, and I was like, hey, I got an idea for Chicks and Giggles. And you were like, cool. We'll write it down. we'll revisit this in about 4 months, like maybe. Yeah, which is pretty funny actually. That it's good to have a schedule like that.
Yeah.
And so right now, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, it's the 30th of October. It's getting into the holidays, and the next holiday here in the United States that's coming up real soon.
Yep, and just happened in Canada.
It just happened in Canada is Thanksgiving, which is a huge holiday here. I mean, it's one of the biggest, easily by far.
Yep.
And it makes you one of the biggest, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, I like it, but we were both very tickled when you came up with this idea.
Just because it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. Go ahead and tell them.
So today, to start our Thanksgiving cycle, I guess you can say, we decided what would be great food kind of related top 8 debate, and I thought, you know what, let's just do Uwe Rosenberg, because what's one of the main things he has as a mechanism?
Feed your people. And we've done food-based topics before.
Yes.
But we're like, well, how do we change it up? I swear, as everyone else has pointed out, Uwe Rosenberg was hungry whenever he designs any of his...
Exactly.
He probably goes on a fast and just writes down ideas and brainstorms and then has a meal and then develops them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my guess.
Yeah, because it's like, I think we have 1, 2... 3-ish, 4, or if food related, one of the games in here is actually food related itself.
Yes.
So, I mean, almost half this list is about feeding your people.
Easily, yeah. Or some kind of food or farming or agriculture,
In
whatever.
fact, one of my honorable mentions deals with feeding something because you're collecting something from something.
At least one of mine might as well. But either way, we're going to get into it. Before we do so, Daniel, what have you been playing lately?
So, as I mentioned earlier, that I just got back from a cruise to the Bahamas. I think I mentioned it off the thing. So, I just had a cruise to the Bahamas. We did Disney World for a little bit.
Tough life. Yeah.
I had a cruise. So I couldn't really play actual games, but I did take a bunch of card games. And one of the newer ones I recently played is called 11 Nipped. You gave me this copy of it. We both played 6 Nipped and actually enjoyed that game a lot because it's basically card shedding. You're trying not to get negative points. The bullheads on the cards. Kind of a la Little Devils I mentioned before, where you don't want to have these cards because they're negative points for you. So I just put it down as like the lowest score wins. Golf rules and stuff like that. So playing it, you're playing in like, I think it's like 4 different stacks, and you got to play in ascending order and stuff like that when you're shedding your cards. This one plays a little different compared to that. This one, everybody gets 10 cards in their hand to start with. Then you have one discard pile in the middle of the table. And you have a choice. You either play a card or you pick up a stack. Those are your two choices. And so you keep doing that until someone picks up a stack. And once they do that, if the stack is one or two cards, you get nothing out of it, but other than cards, and your whole purpose is trying to get cards out of your hand. But if you pick a stack that has 3 or more cards in it, you get a bullhead card. And that bullhead card will allow you, if you play it, that you can play multiple cards on one stack. If you have multiple bullheads, it allows you to play on multiple cards on multiple stacks. So it's interesting how you can start finagling that as well. And then when someone takes a stack, it adds a new stack. They replace the one that got taken and add a new one. So at one point you only have one, and then next thing you know, a couple rounds in, you have like 5 different stacks that you can play on. However, you can only play in ascending order. That's one of the rules. Mm-hmm. That's cards 1 through 100. And there is a big rule, is that when you do play a card, it has to follow within 10. So it can never go over 10. So if there's a 66 on the board, I cannot play a 77 because it's 11 points higher. But I can play the 66 or the 76, jump it up 10, and then I can play, if I had a bullhead, I could play the 77 and then 78 and stuff like that I had. So you have to follow that 10 rule. It's real quick, and you play a round per player. So for us, when we played it, it's 4 players. Whoever has the lowest score ends up winning. And so you start seeing the wheels clicking, and my friend Angel and my wife, who are very strategic players, and so they were taking massive big stacks with their, when they didn't need to. They can play on a couple things, but then they saw how they know how that stack is working, and they can feed cards in their hand. All right, there's a stack there. They can play a bullhead card and play off multiple cards. So they slide the cards that fit into there, and then they play their bullhead, and then boom, they went from 3 cards in their hand to like 13 cards in their hand to 1 card in their hand. And so they kept kicking mine and our friend Maria's butt every time they did stuff like that. But it was a really, really cool game. I liked it a lot. In fact, I want to pick up 6 Nymph and play that again. Because honestly, I would keep both in my
Yeah, they're different enough.
Yeah, it's really cool how it works. So that is 11 Nymph.
And also here in America, it's another name for it is Take 5.
Take 5 or Take 6 or something like that.
Yeah, it's Take 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes less sense because Take 5 is 6 nymphs, and so 2 different numbers.
Yeah.
Little confusing, but either way.
But I think the Take 5, the reason why it's called Take 5 is because those cards can be played in 5 different ways. You can play the 6 nymph variant, the rules, but there's also other games that you can play with the cards.
Yeah. All right, the first game I wanted to talk about that I've been playing, I finally got it to the table. I brought it over when you and I were having a game day, and I looked at the rules. I was like, oh wait, the 2-player variant is playing 2 2-player.
Oh, we were like,
each.
No.
Yeah, and immediately no. Like, and that's one modification to a game I really don't like. If I have to play multiple players on...
You're not going to hit light tomorrow.
Well, I mean, that's an exception, right?
It's something I have to get to.
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, I do it for your games, but if I have the option to not have to do it, then I'm not going to do it. That's really my
I
plan.
agree. No, I do not disagree with you. I just need to get this game played because it's been sitting on my shelf for 6 years.
Yep. I'm not putting you down for that. I'm trying to bring up my game, sir. No, the game I played was Madam Ching.
Okay,
Because we got 3 players to play it. And so the way this game works is pretty simple. You have a big board that either goes to the right side of the board or down and right. Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like a triangular path. And you're trying to get as far as you can because the numbers on that increase, and the farther you get, let's say I land on the number 31, then if I end my journey there, I get to take the mission tile that is closest to that number without going over. So if there's a 29 there, and that's the highest one, I can take the 29. But if there's a 32, I can't take it because I didn't get that far.
Yeah.
And so all of these give you points in different ways. Some will give you like gold coins, which are worth 1 point. There's red, whites, and blues gems that are worth varying values, 2, 3, and 4 points traditionally. And there's other ways to modify that as well.
Okay.
But there's also, the way you do it is you're playing the game kind of similar to, kind of like the game. You're only always going in increasing value, and the numbers are anywhere from 1 to 55. So if I play a 25, I can't play anything less in that same journey. However, they have different colors on the cards. And if you play a card of a different color, you go down and diagonal, which gets you way more farther on the progress.
Yeah.
If you play a card of the same color, you just go right. And eventually, if you get to the point where you get to the edge of the map, well, then that's just as far as you can. That's no man's land. You're going way off the path. But if you go all the way down to the bottom and right, which you have to play like 8 different colors,
Yeah.
you get to Hong Kong, and the first player to do that gets 10 points, which is pretty cool how it works.
Yeah.
So you're playing these along, and as people end their journeys, they go back to the beginning. The card that they play will then become, like, let's say I have like a 45 and I play a 12
Okay.
as my next card. Well, that'll be the first card of my next journey. So I start off on the number 1. And then you continue from that and you keep building up from there. And it's cool because at first we're all traveling like right at the same pace.
Yeah.
And then eventually like one person will go like one card shattered than the other person's like, okay, fine. So they're a little bit ahead. And then, but it's like, well, I had a pretty bad one. So let me just do this and let me just jump around. And then by the end of the game, you're all just at completely different levels. But whoever plays the lowest card gets to draft the cards that are available first, which gives a little bit of an advantage to whoever's farthest back versus the people who are scoring the real big points.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, they have some symbols. Each of the symbols, if you get like a 3 or 4 of a kind of a symbol, then you get to take special ability cards, which give you either like an additional card in your hand, or you add 6 to how big your journey was, or you get encounters or whatever. And if you get all of those, then you get a big ship, which is worth 5 points, and that triggers the end of the game.
Okay.
Or until all the mission tiles are gone, which is more likely. It's a fun little card game. It is way overproduced. It's very pretty, but it works really well. It's just a simple little, like, oh, I'm going to play this card, I'm going to play this card. And you're all playing at different times, watching as you're, like, jumping across this board. And also, if you play a lot of cards of the same color, eventually you might trigger events, which are extra little bonus cards. You pull the card, you see what's going to happen. It was really neat. I was actually really impressed with it. It's probably going to stay in my collection. I think it was one of the best games I played that night. But now out of 4 or 5. I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Madam Ching.
Alright, so my next game is a game that I've talked about before. We both like this series of games. But I really, really enjoy this. My buddies brought this one on the cruise ship. I like the way this did it. It's a 2-part set, or 2-part game for the Unlock series. I've never played one of those where it does like 2 parts. This one is called Mission Number 07.
Okay.
So it's kind of like you're working for an agency and you're trying to figure out who's the spy within the agency, and they're working with a different company. And so you're doing whatever you need to do. You do the puzzles. Really, really neat. I like the fact, first off, it was a 2-part series. So you did it, you found out who the guy is, and then using the same hour time frame, you go to the second half of the game where you're trying to stop whatever their plot is.
That's cool.
And so it's got a really cool little in-game aspect of it that I really did enjoy. No spoilers here, but if you know, you know, because it does something you don't really see a lot of times in these escape rooms in a box type series of games. It had some really cool puzzles in it. It dealt with some stuff, especially towards the back half of the game. It was really, really neat how it worked, and we really enjoyed it. And honestly, a big part of it, too, we liked it because when we were on the cruise, we basically couldn't get on Wi-Fi. We couldn't do anything of that. The app was basically the only thing that we can get access to because it's already just downloaded to your system.
Sure.
And so it was allowing us to disconnect and actually just sit there and game and not look at our phones and stuff like that. And it was really cool how this one worked because everybody was just engaged with the puzzles. And there was other people that were coming we were like in the library on the cruise ship. So people were coming in, they were watching us and whatever we were doing and stuff like that. We're playing like this escape room thing. And then other people were playing like their card games, and then you could just see them like just keep looking over what we're doing. We were trying to keep quiet to our table and stuff like that, and discuss how we need to do things, and we figured stuff out. And when it got to that end game, we were just like, "That's neat." This is actually probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite Unlock that I've played so far.
Wow.
And that's saying something because I played the Star Wars one, but the puzzles are cool. That little in-game scenario was really neat. I really enjoyed this one. Unlock Mission Number 7.
Awesome. And just to reply real quick to Illuminous, I am not familiar with Curie AI.
Curie Eye?
Curie AI?
Yeah, I'm not
Do
familiar.
enlighten us. And yes, Creative Chaos, the new upcoming game from Think 12, looks very pretty. Viewers of the podcast will know. It looks very pretty. And the next game that I've been playing is one that I was very excited to get to the table. As soon as we got it in stock at our local store, I bought it right away because I saw it at Gamma. Me and our mutual friend Dom all played it when we were at Gamma, and this was one of my favorite games that we played there. It is a two-player cooperative game.
Is it Sky Teams?
Sky Team, yes. Oh my goodness. I bought my copy and I didn't get a chance to play it. But my son actually joined me for that game night, and so he was playing games with other people. So the version I showed to the other players was the first time my copy was played.
Oh, okay.
And so I love it when that happens. Like they play it, they're like, wow, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then I taught it to my son and a friend of mine, and they played it, and it was awesome. It went over really well. They absolutely loved it. My son adored it. It's almost to the point where it's not that common where he actively requests me to play games.
Yeah.
And he absolutely has with this one.
Nice.
He wants to play scenario after scenario after scenario because it gets intense. It works really well how it works because the way it works is simple. You each have 4 dice, and your goal is to land the plane. 1 die has to be assigned to the engines. The engines determine how fast you go, which is how far you go along the actual track.
Yeah.
Each of the different airports have different tracks with different numbers of airplanes on it. Another one is you have to balance the plane, where you have to keep it as horizontal as possible. If you ever go completely vertical in either direction, it's immediately game over because you've lost control. And that's the other one you have to do that's required. Some of the other things that you could do is the captain, they have to apply the brakes by putting either a 2, 4, and then a 6 in that order.
Yeah.
Or they have to do 4 other dice, which actually increases the lower speed. They're actually lowering the flaps.
Yeah.
In order to, or actually no, they have the wheels. They're lowering the wheels to make it go slower. The co-pilot has the flaps that they need to lower to start easing up on the flight. And you have to do all of these in succession while applying dice to the radio tower to clear out planes that are in the way, which seems like it should be their job, but I'm not a pilot, so what do I know? And then you have to do that as you're slowly descending. So you have from 6,000 feet, as you go down, it's 6,000, then 5,000, 4,000. And when you get to that bottom level, you better be at the airport. You have to have all your wheels down. You have to have all the flaps ready. You have to put the engine speed slower than your brake speed and hope that there's no planes in the way. It's so good. And it sounds so stressful, but and here's the thing. It plays over a series of rounds. Each round you have a phase where you do communicate and you're like, all right, here's kind of the game plan. I'm going to probably play on here first, and I'll play like my middle number, whatever I think that is. You balance that out. Then, or I can put a higher number here, or I definitely need to get these brakes ready, et cetera, et cetera. And then as soon as the dice are rolled, no talking for the rest of that round. Which is totally how flying works, right?
Yeah.
Again, not a pilot, not a sponsor. I don't know. But I don't know how...
Honestly, I was just on a plane. I hope those pilots were talking to each
other.
Right.
Yeah, one would hope, right? But when we finished playing it at Gamma, we're like, okay, that was cool. That was fun. And it seemed pretty easy, but, it's a fun little game. And then one thing that the person told us about it, which set it far and above, they're like, there's more than 10 scenarios. Everything from having to do with wind speeds, to an intern that doesn't know what they're doing, to running out of fuel, to an ice storm landing.
Oh,
just crazy stuff. And you're like, wait, what? And
That's
there's different airports you're landing at, different paths, different levels of difficulty, and there's the flight log, which you check every time you succeed at it. It's so crazy. But man, is it such a good, fun campaign game for 2 players, and it works really well. I can't recommend it enough. If I did ratings, which I normally don't, but if I did, this is easily a 9 out of 10.
Really?
Easily, yeah.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. I would love to show it to you sometime.
Honestly, you don't rate a lot of things 10. I rate more 10s than you do.
I very rarely rate 10s. But this is, so far right now, this is about a 9. I'm increasingly impressed with it every time I play it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Components are good. Bees are good. Theme is good. Strategy is good. Really good.
Nice.
Legitimately. Yeah. Anyway, can't recommend enough. Alright, what is it saying about Kira Eye?
That it's an enthralling battle between 2 players, each with a hand of cards that represent their movements and attacks on battlefield. The fight happens in a narrow lane where combatants edge forward and back in a deadly dance. Each round, opponents will select one movement or attack and then reveal them simultaneously before resolving them. Advance or retreat. Strike high or low. The first samurai to score 2 hits wins.
Wow. Luminous, honestly, if you like a lot of depth and like small amount of cards, because there's only 16 cards in this game. Another one that's similar to that is Seals of Cthulhu by Think 12. Actually, it's a really cool little 2-player micro game. All right, Daniel, shall we get into this?
We shall.
Again, this is going to be our top 8 debate for Uwe Rosenberg games. We had 10 ranked. What we did is we went on BoardGameGeek.com, found Uwe Rosenberg as a designer, which has like 200 something games to his title, or titles to his name, and we put them by rank, and we picked the top 8 that you and I have both played. That's important because when we make the arguments for it, we want to be able to make a sound argument. So we apologize if some of your favorites are skipped because of this. We try to get ones that we can legitimately debate.
Argue, yeah.
Yeah, because if one of us hasn't played 8 of them, then it just can't happen. But by all means, you're allowed to put in your recommendation games, and let's see what some of those honorable mentions are.
All right, I'm getting that pulled up right now. So our first one was added by Michael, and he said Indian Summer. Now, this one looked interesting. I did see it on the list.
Yeah, it's another polyomino game.
Yeah, but I have not played it. So.
No, I haven't played any of the ones that are on that series. There's Indian Summer is one of them, and I think they have like different seasons assigned to them, like something spring and whatever. Yeah, again, it's a lot of polyomino. He went from farming to hardcore polyomino. Which is kind of strange, but I mean, if that's your thing, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next one that was added from another Daniel,
represent,
was Agricola. Now, there's a reason we didn't put this on the list initially, and let's just explain that right now before we have to later. Because Caverna's on the list. And let's be honest.
They're very similar.
They're very similar. I know they're different games and different people like them for the same reason.
Yeah.
But we're going to take that into account.
Yeah.
We'll be arguing the pros for either of them, but when we say Caverna, we also mean Agricola.
And it's the same reason, like if we were doing one of the North Trilogy series from Tim Phillips. Raiders is the higher rated one, so that's the one would go on our list. Same thing with like the Architects series, the West Kingdom series.
Yep.
We'd probably put Paladins on the list over Architects of the Last Kingdom.
Even though they're very different games.
Yeah. But they kind of go into the same style of sense.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, that's just one of the reasons why Agricola didn't make the list.
Yep. All right, cool.
The next one here was added by Kevin, Glass Road. I have been intrigued by this one. It looks interesting.
It does. Kevin also added Reykholt, which is farming in the Nordic countries, or Iceland.
Yeah. Next up, he also added Gates of Loyang.
And he also added Newsforward.
Both of those I have not played.
Nope.
Gates of Loyang is one of his older ones, if I remember correctly.
It does look really cool. I was very, very close to getting it one year.
Laszlo added Fields of Arle.
Yeah, Fields of Arle was his. Yeah, he didn't even know it. Yeah. Near, forgive us if I've mispronounced your name, added... Speaking of things that are going to be trouble to... This is the name of the game. Oranienburger Canal? Oranienburger Canal? Yeah. Which honestly looks awful. Like the cover.
The cover
I remember
really
it's one of the ugliest things I've seen. But
and that's saying something because I've seen the covers that you bust out sometimes.
Yeah.
Case in point, what was it? Federicus?
Oh, Frederica. That whole components list was just oof.
Rachel added Atiwa, which is one we'll talk about a little later.
Yep. Rachel also added Hallertau.
Never played that one.
Nope.
And finally, Yuki added Fairy Trails.
Cool. So, we also added an option where you can post your comments on it and explain why you do or don't like some of the things, or also honorable mention explaining why you added it on the list. Joe said, I'm not really a Rosenberg fan, but I like Loyang, Bonanza, and Hallertau.
And Rachel was just adding on that she added Hallertau to the vote, so anything added later has a disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, again, disadvantage is a relative term. We weren't going to debate it anyway.
Yeah, it's only going to be touching. It just allows the audience to put honorable mentions.
Yeah, exactly. So, but by all means, if we do eventually play it and come back to it, that might be an advantage. Orienburger Canal is the best game I played so far. Odin might dethrone it once I play it more, and that was by Nier again.
And Michael said, honestly, he thinks Indian Summer combination of race without any points. And the Zen feel is a wonder to behold. The visuals help a lot too.
Very cool.
So that's another reason why I kind of want to play it. It looks like a really nice game.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And it was just me adding the rank for people to find out where this is. So if you're interested, you can find it on the Board Game Revolution Facebook page.
And let's talk about our honorable mentions, because we picked out a few as well.
Yep. I've only played one of them. The other two I'm really interested in playing, though.
Okay. Do you want to lead us off, or do you want to flip?
Sure. I'll lead it off. The only one I played, it was also an honorable mention by the audience. One of the reasons we discussed why we took it out, Agricola, they play very similar. I did enjoy it. I just like Caverna a little bit better for what it does, because you're not only, you have your farm outside, you're also building inside the caves, and you're doing the stuff in there. So I like all that aspect of it. I just think Caverna just felt a little cleaner too, a little bit more streamlined than, say, Agricola did. But I did enjoy Agricola. For one of the earlier worker placement games, it still sings pretty darn well. I remember us going to buy your copy of Agricola, and we went into the shady part. Not the shady.
No, that
part.
was pretty nice.
That was
a pretty nice gated community.
No, but going way out of our way.
Very out of our way.
To find this, to pick up your copy that you bought off Craigslist.
Yes.
And so yeah, it was really neat. But we did play it. We did really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Had a good time with it. But I think and people agree, Caverna just kind of does it a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one I wanted to talk about was a game. It's a roll and write game. It came around the same time as Patchwork Doodle, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very same company, I believe. This is Second Chance. It's another one of his polyomino.
I saw that
roll
one.
And write. Yeah, it's like a 9x9 grid or 11x11, something to that effect. And the way it works is pretty simple. You flip over a card, and then you choose which of the cards. I think there's two. It's been a while since I played, but there's two you choose from. You draw that in. You're trying to fill in your board, but at some point later on in the game, if you flip over a card and you are unable to draw it in, you get a second chance where you flip over a blind one from the top, and that's if you are able to pull it off and draw it in, you're able to survive, basically. Which sounds like it shouldn't work, but I swear that flip card works way often. Like, way more than it should.
Oh, okay.
And there's something interesting about that. It's a cool little give and take. But other than that, it's just really trying to fit the shapes into the area.
Okay.
Nothing too exciting. It does work. It's fun. It's enjoyable, but second chance.
All right, so the next game I'm going to talk about here is one that was also mentioned in there and actually intrigues me. I do want to play this one. I've seen copies of it in the wild, but I just don't know. I'm not that big of a Rosenberg fan to go out of my way to pick this at full price. But this one intrigues me because you're not feeding your people. You're feeding your bats because you're basically raising a bat farm to collect their poop. It's called a Tiwa. It looks really, really interesting. The cover is actually probably one of the better looking covers from that company.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
What is it? Lookout, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cool. I do love bats. I think they're amazing creatures for what they do. You're basically, it's kind of like a worker placement. You're getting bats, you're trying to feed them fruit because you want to collect the guano because that's going to be like your points at the end of the game, and you're using them for different stuff. It's actually based on like a not historical, but stuff that's that's actually happening today because guano is a very important thing that people use for makeup, for any chemical reaction kind of stuff. So it's really neat how they tied this into a board game, and I do want to try this one a lot. Again, something I don't want to pay full price for, but it intrigues me
for
a lot.
box of poop, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you're gonna play with poop, let's play Wombat Rescue and lay down some cubes, all right? The second one I wanted to talk about today was a game that I played a while back when it was nominated for the Spiel des Jahres. It didn't win, but it was nominated that year, and this is Nova Luna.
Okay, yeah. This was on my short list because it looks pretty good.
Yeah. Except, so each of the tiles has a couple different things. It has a general background, whether it's orange, green, purple, or I think red. It was like kind of unfortunate color choices.
Yeah.
Really, there's a couple that are a little too similar. and it has a number of like different colored dots on it that help describe, hey, look, these are the ones that it needs to be connected to in order for you to complete it. Unlike a lot of the others, you can take one of those and it gives you a certain amount of time that you have to wait. You have to kind of you draft the tile, you put it in your field adjacent to in any of the fields that you have already, and if you complete one of them, then you put out one of your completion tokens on it. Your first to get rid of their completion tokens wins. It works pretty well. It's a fun little puzzle. It's a little weird that you. There is one thing about it that, like, let's say if one of the tiles needs like 3 green, one of those green has to be adjacent to that tile in order to score it. But then the rest of the group can meander off as long as it's connected through adjacent tiles.
Okay.
Which is always kind of weird, like seeing it's like, well, you can only count what's adjacent, or if there's other colors that are touching, but those aren't technically adjacent in the same line.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little weird.
Yeah.
But once you get past that, it's fine. Nova Luna. That's my number 2.
All right. So my last one here is an old game that just was announced recently getting a reprint. So the pick for me here was Babel. It looks like an interesting little 2-player game. They're turning it into, it's generic fantasy, basically Clash of Magic, or Clash of Magic is what it's called now, where you're basically rivaled headmasters of sorcerer schools, and you're trying to compete in this tournament or something to say you're the better school, and it's card play and stuff like that. It looks really intriguing. Babel looks like one of the most boring games I've ever seen based on that cover. But mind you, this was 2002 or something like that. Yeah. So it looks really, really cool. I did see this. I'm like, okay, that may be going on my short list. And then I looked into how the game plays, and it's basically just tactical card play in a sense.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by this. So I pick Clash of Magic or Babel whenever I can play.
Yeah. Now I used to own this one.
Did you?
Yeah, I used to. It was interesting. It had some really fun things to it. It didn't stand out in my mind. I'm having a hard time remembering it. And I think I played it only about 3 or 4 months ago.
Really?
Like, it wasn't long ago, and I ended up trading it away. Yeah, it was cool for what it did. Yeah. But not
it's
enough
getting
to live in the
reprint.
line. Yeah.
Clash of Magic. I do love like that Harry Potter-esque type stuff. The magicians and stuff like that. Wizards, not magicians. Like you. Good times.
What's your third one? My third one, the final one. And this is the one I really wanted to highlight because it was brought up in the honorable mentions list. And I 100% agree with it. This is the one that if you had played it, that we would be able to make some really strong arguments for.
Okay.
And this is Ray Colt.
Okay, yeah.
Ray Colt, I am very impressed with. This is one of my favorite Uwe Rosenberg games, easily. And I like all the ones that are on the top 8 are absolutely there for a reason, and I get why they're there. But Ray Colt would easily be like slotted in, and we'd be arguing.
Honestly, I would take because I've seen Ray Colt. I've just never played it, so I can't really make an argument about it. But I'd probably play it over like Patchwork Doodle or some of the other stuff here. But
and some of the things that makes it interesting, so that it's fairly standard worker placement, although certain rows, if you put one like one of your workers on one with a flag, you can't put another one on a flag in that same column. So like it's like that's a really good ability, and so you just can't do that again. And one of the things is you're trying to trade in your vegetables and your crops for essentially points in a way.
Okay.
You're climbing up, you're serving people, and it first starts off needing one. Each person needs a single vegetable, and it just goes through all 5 of them. And then everybody needs 2, then 3, then 4. So by the time you're serving 4 vegetables to somebody, you're already like 20 points technically. But it's not really points. It's whoever gets the farthest on the tables. Because if you ever come up to a table, let's say I trade in potato because I have the potato. I don't remember if potato's in it, and then a carrot, and then a cauliflower. But I don't have a lettuce. I think that's one of the next ones. I'm sure that's out of order, so don't yell at me. I don't have it memorized. But if you don't have one of those on the serving tables, you can skip it and instead receive one of those vegetables.
Okay.
And so I could do like the carrot and the cauliflower, skip the lettuce, take it, but then I have tomatoes, so I can play that table and continue going as long as I have the stuff as far as I can. And you're allowed to skip over one table and receive it, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's also some special ability cards, which are really powerful. And one of the worker placement spots lets you go there and take one of those abilities. But if you're ever playing, let's say we're playing a 4-player game, and you and I are sitting next to each other, if I have that ability, you could go to the spot and go, you know what, I like that ability, and we put it between us, and then now we both have it, and then it's locked in place. And so that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, you can't directly affect the person across the table from you, but you can absolutely, like,
screw them over.
Well, you can pair up with the people next to you, and it's kind of like, oh, you did the hard work, but you know what, I want in on that. That's a really good deal. I like that, you know. And that's really fun. And so those like two little things just completely upend it and make it just a really fun experience. So I like it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very cool.
All right, so let's get into this, our top 8 debate here. You want to tell us what the brackets are like?
That's right. We're going to go our top 8 highest ranked games on Board Game Geek that you and I have both played. That will be our number 1 seed, Feast for Odin.
Going up against our number 8 seed, Bargain Hunter.
Our number 2 seed, Caverna.
The Cave Farmers.
The Cave Farmers, not the 2-player version.
Yeah, versus our 7 seed, Patchwork Doodle.
Number 3 seed, Le Havre.
Going up against our number 6 seed, New York Zoo.
And our number 4 seed, Patchwork.
Going up against our number 5 seed, one of our favorite games, Bonanza.
Bonanza, that's right. So this will be a hard one.
Oh, it will.
Honestly. Very,
like,
very
some
difficult.
of them, like the matchups are really, really good. I think like only one of them I would pick another game over the other one. But like our first one here that we're talking about, Feast for Odin versus Bargain Hunter, I really enjoy both of these games. And you'd be surprised, I kind of want to play Bargain Hunter over Feast for Odin.
I wouldn't be surprised because I absolutely want to play that, and for reasons which we'll explain later.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how we actually rank these. I'm glad you brought it up, like how it's going to be difficult because we're going to talk about how we try to take our bias out of it.
Yeah.
We have 5 criteria that we meet for each of our top 8 debates, and that includes ease of play, and that's how simple the mechanisms are, the likelihood of getting it to the table, whether it's the mechanism or the theme, or how easy is it to learn, teach, and understand.
And then our next criteria is the replay value. The length of time and scaling of the game is a 2-player game, almost relatively the same amount of time as a 4-player game. You know, time is going to be added if you add players, but is it the same?
Not always, right?
Not always, but yes. Minimum number of plays of the full experience. This is a leg up for some campaign games because you have to play them multiple times. And the expandability.
It keeps it refreshed.
Yeah.
You know.
And the expandability. Already existing expansions, up to 1 possible future expansions. If there's a Volume 1, we're assuming there's going to be a Volume 2. Or it's confirmed by the designer or publisher.
Then we have meaningful choice. How well does your strategies impact the other players? How much depth do you have in your strategy, tactics, or skills? And then finally, do arbitrary choices or analysis paralysis affect your gameplay as well as others?
Next up here, we have game immersion. Is the game fun to lose? That's a big thing, because I'm okay if I'm losing and getting my butt handed to me as long as I'm having fun. But if I'm seeing I'm out after the first round and just miserable at the rest of the table, it's not going to lead to a good time. The player interaction, which includes the table talk, in the role playing, are you getting into your stuff, or the trash talking is one of our big things in our group.
Right, yep.
Yes,
it is.
And the memorable moments that make you stand out, that laugh, that make you giggle because something's very familiar, stuff like that.
And then lastly, the art and production. How well does the art portray to us? Now, a lot of the artists are using the same companies for this, but that may change. The pieces and quality of components, and finally the graphic design. How easy is it to read? Do you have icon based? Or, most importantly of all for us, is it colorblind friendly?
Which, a lot of these, not so much.
Not so much.
But when it all else fails and we can't come to a consensus, that's why it's important for you to vote in our poll at Board Game Revolution Community on Facebook. We put a poll there every time we do a top 8 debate. You decide the tiebreaker.
That's right. So let's get into this. We have our first matchup. Feast for Odin versus Bargain Hunters. Our number 1 versus number 8 seed. Daniel, you have the Cup of Doom. I have the Coin of Doom. We'll see who argues first. Here we go.
As you drop it.
I will be starting first.
You get Feast for Odin.
Of course I do. Alright, so, Feast for Odin. is this not his magnum opus?
It really is.
If really, I mean, this is the highest rank. This is #1 seed for a reason, and that's because pretty much he's used his entire 20 plus years of game design and put it into this game.
Yes.
I mean, really, this game is massive. And I know some people will be like, "Whoa, no, it's not that bad. It's like a medium weight." No, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's a big heavyweight Euro game.
He practically throws every game that he's ever created in this one game.
Yeah.
You like Patchwork? It's here.
Yeah.
You like Caverna? Well, you got to feed your people in this one too.
Yeah. Yeah, you're farming, you're either battling ships, you're upgrading your stuff, you're giving the feast for Odin, you know, by polyominoes. There's more mechanisms in just a portion of this game than there is in most others.
Yes.
So that being said, as far as Euro games go, this is basically a sandbox. And there's a reason it's ranked this high. Because it's not just that it's a game for everybody, because it's definitely not.
No.
Our experience, it was fine. I enjoyed it.
We enjoyed it, but honestly, neither one of us have to own it in our collection, because one of us own, or one of our group already owns it.
And the likelihood of us playing it continuously, it's not as common.
I hear Dice Tower talk about these games all the time. This, for sure, is a lifetime game. So it's something that if you're going to play it, this is going to be the one thing you play a lot of.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so, like I said, the people who really like the style of game really like the style of game because it really does hit on all those things. Now, there was one thing that really genuinely surprised me when I played it, and I think you agree with me, is that this is one of his only games that has dice combat. Which is really weird. Yeah, honestly, that's bizarre that there's dice combat in a Euro game. But there's dice combat in a Euro game, and it actually works.
And it does really well.
Surprisingly well.
Yeah, and this is Uwe Rosenberg's point salad.
Yes.
So we say this a lot with Stefan Feld. You can get your points anywhere you want, but you also got to be careful. There is negative points.
Yes, that's right. You got to make sure you feed your people.
And not just that, you got to make sure at the end of the game you have your little your little Tetris piece covered.
Yep. So it's definitely an interesting game. The one time I played it, I'm very glad we did.
Yeah.
But I was also guaranteed it's no, I don't need to have this anymore.
No. Yeah. I always was intrigued by it. I always wanted to play it, but I didn't want to pay that price for one thing for it.
Right.
Two, I didn't want to punch all those punch boards because that was a lot.
Yep.
And two, when we played it, I'm like, no, this is only going to be played with this group, so I don't need to own it. My wife would probably enjoy it, but she'd be bored with it after like an hour because it's a long game.
Yes.
When we're talking about scaling well at a 4-player, I think it took us 4 hours to play. It's basically an hour per player, and mind you, everybody was new, so understandable. I think you can get it in a 4-player to 3 hours if everybody's consistently and know how to play this game. That's a big if, because this game is long.
Yep, that it is. All right, your argument for Bargain
Hunters. Well, I'll tell you one thing for sure. This is not winning art production.
No, it's not.
No. Though, a lot of people like the art style in this one because it makes them remember an old movie from their day, The Brave Little Toaster.
It really does.
Yeah, that literally...
The cover is just like a stark gray cover.
Yeah.
And then a washing machine that looks like it's straight out of a Brave Little Toaster movie.
But in all honesty, it is a neat little trick-taking game. So you're taking tricks, and I'm trying to remember this exactly how it went. You're taking tricks, and you're only going to score what's on top. So, like, if I have toasters, those are the tricks I'm going to take, or I'm scoring. So all the other tricks underneath me are not all that great, but then they're also going to become your cards for the next round, if I remember correctly. So
you want to score certain sets and certain things that apply to you specifically. Whatever you're gaining the most of, that's going to be the most valuable.
Score, yeah.
So even if you're not trying to win the trick, you're still trying to win the cards.
Yes. So it's interesting how it works. It's been a while since we played it, but I want to play this one again because I really, really did enjoy it.
Yep.
In fact, one of our mutual friends, Gamehead Geek, not a fan of trick-taking games. There's very few trick-taking games he enjoys. Little Devils one, he actually enjoyed playing this once he gronked it. He's like, okay, this was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So we had a good time with it. It's not going to win art production, but I will say it wins ease of play, even with it being a trick-taking.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
And you got to learn certain things about it. But yeah, no. But Feast for Odin is really good. But honestly, out of these two games, I'd play this one again.
And I agree. I 100% like this game better. I don't think it should move on.
Yeah, I agree. It does. Should it move on? Because
We'll
honestly,
double check just in case.
art and production is Feast for Odin.
Yes.
Game immersion is probably Feast for Odin because there's a lot of cool stuff. Like when our friend Dom broke the game.
Right.
When he got really excited about that.
Right.
Much more meaningful choice in Feast for Odin just because of where you got to go and different ways you can do it.
Yeah.
You concentrated on the dice battling.
Yes.
And that's how you did a lot of your points. I concentrated on the growing in the garden and stuff like that, and that's how I got my points. And I fed my people, so I didn't get punished for that.
Yep.
There's a lot more game immersion or meaningful choice in that as well. Even though for a trick-taking game, there is a lot of meaningful choices in Bargain Hunters. Yeah. And then the replay value.
That's Feast for Odin.
That's Feast for Odin.
Yeah. So Feast for Odin moves on. Round 1 is done. Forgive us while we have
write this down. Yeah, and next one is Caverna, the Cave Farmers, not to be mistaken for the 2-player version of Caverna. I forget what that one's called.
All caves big and small.
Yeah.
No, I know that's not it.
Nah, it's something.
That's the Agricola version. All creatures big and small. Caverna versus Patchwork Doodles. Here we go. I'll be starting off. Almost lost it again. I'm going for the big guns here.
Yeah.
Now, Caverna is one that I will hard argue. And I really like Patchwork, and I own Patchwork Doodles. Don't get me wrong, I like it a lot.
Doodles is a really neat role play.
Yeah.
What is it? What do they call it? Roll and Write. There we go.
Yeah, Roll and Write. But here's the thing, Caverna. There's a reason this unseated Agricola. Mm-hmm. That's because you could do everything that you normally could in Agricola, just in Caverna, and still have a fighting chance to win, if you're really efficient at it. But what you do is you have a board that is half farmland or ranchland outside, basically, and half that is underground, and you have to dig it out. Now, there's a bunch of cool stuff that's underground, like your dwarves that are going under there. You're going to have some animals, but mainly you're trying to dig paths amongst your cave. Mm-hmm. You're trying to find the right minerals to gather from there, or you're just hunting for general treasures. Or you can start farming on the outside, where you can raise animals of different types. You can grow crops, which will have different ways that you can sow them.
And you have to feed your people.
And you have to feed your people, which you mainly live inside of the cave, which is pretty cool. But the worker placement part of this that sets it apart, and I still don't see this hardly anywhere else. And this is what I love about it, is that you start off with just a handful of spots that you can go to. Everyone goes for those same spots, and then every round a new worker placement spot appears.
Yep.
Why doesn't more things do that? That's such a smart idea.
I do like that. The closest I think that does something like that is viticulture, where it just goes into the different seasons. But even then...
But every season's the same? Or not every season, but every year is the same.
Yeah, every year is the same.
I mean, that's cool. But again, that expanse of growing and growing amongst
the only thing I've seen that's close to it is viticulture.
Right.
I mean...
Yeah, and it's not that common, but it's still... I've seen one other game that does it. It's called Holmes, Mycroft versus Sherlock.
Oh, okay.
And it's just a 2-player worker placement that does it. And they both work really well, but it's just that the way this one works is so brilliant. How you have, this very, very expansive options of what you could do. Mm-hmm. You can either build houses and upgrade your homes. You can get cattle and raise them for points. You can breed them. You can grow crops. You can dig in your tunnels. You can find these minerals. You can do all of these crazy things. The world is your oyster, and Caverna proves that. I wholeheartedly think this should move on.
And the thing about Caverna, though, there is one thing. You need to concentrate on one or two of those things. You need to make sure you grow your crops to feed your people, or you're getting food somehow to feed your people. Yep. But if you try to dabble in everything and be a jack of all trade, master of none, you're not going to compete.
Win. No. You have to specialize.
And so I kind of agree with you that Caverna is going to move on. I do have to argue Patchwork Doodle, and it's a fine little roll and write. This one is you're rolling a die and you're putting patterns in your thing, and you want to cover as much space as you possibly can in Patchwork Doodle, because as any of his polynomials, if you don't cover spaces, it's negative points at the end of the game. It's really neat. My friend Maria really enjoyed it because she likes quilts and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty neat when I lent it to them during the lockdowns. And it's a fine game. It's fun to play. I had a good time with it. But in all honesty, it went up with the Juggernaut. So I honestly can't disagree with Caverna moving on. Because you look at everything, probably the ease of play is the only thing that Patchwork Doodle will win.
Because it's a very simple, like, 20-minute game.
Yeah, because replay value, Caverna. Meaningful choice, Caverna. Because, again, when it comes to the dice rolling, that's an arbitrary choice. You're stuck with whatever's been rolled. Game immersion, Caverna.
Caverna, yeah.
I remember it, our mutual friend who recently passed away, we mentioned it, Lencho. Mm-hmm. He was really, really loving that little combat system because he liked that little...
He very much liked that.
He enjoyed that a lot. So he really got into it. And, of course, the art and production's pretty nice for a game as old as Caverna is.
That's right. Cool. So I agree. Caverna moves on.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be fighting against whatever shows up winner of probably this next one. We'll see.
More than likely, just in case, if the next one, the lower seed wins, then no, it will not face it.
Well, we'll see.
All right.
More than likely, though.
Go ahead and talk.
Our next round. Round 3. Le Havre versus New York Zoo. Two of the most different games on this list.
That's my water, not the...
You just try to pull out of the cup of doom and dunked your hand.
In my water, yeah.
Well, you know, you're getting your fingers wet so you can pull out the right Post-it note. That's what it was, right?
Yep.
It's like how people lick their fingers to pull, like, flip pages and stuff. You'll be starting yourself.
I only do that in my books, but yes.
Yeah, well, of course.
I get New York Zoo.
All right.
Which is interesting because I actually like this game a lot. It's actually one of my favorite games on this list.
Yeah.
Le Havre is fine. I understand why people like it. It's really neat what it does, and it's, again, one of those heavier ones. So there's a reason why that is number 3. But New York Zoo, I think, is a hidden, I wouldn't say a hidden gem, but it was like a diamond in the rough. It kind of just came and went, and no one actually really paid attention to it. And you're thinking, okay, Uwe Rosenberg's like this big name. You think you would see it more. I mean, I picked my copy off on clearance at Barnes & Noble because they were just pushing it out for $15. I was like, all right, I'll try this out. We all played it as a group. We played it a couple times in our game group.
Yep, I like it a lot.
And it's really, really neat because, first off, it's a race. That's all it is. You're the first one to fill up your zoo wins. You got different ways of doing it because you're trying to breed your animals. You're trying to move your pieces. Kind of does the patchwork aspect of movement. You can only move so far on the track. If you cross a certain threshold, you get to breed that specific animal. And you pick up a tile. The top tiles have less space compared to the bottom tiles because you want to fill up your bigger space. You can breed your things. You can only keep so many animals onto the side before you put them into the exhibit. Once you pull a new territory, you can move that animal down into that territory. And then if you have 2, when you pass a breeding, you can add the breeding. Once you fill up all the spots of animals in there, you get to take a bonus tile out of different stacks of the bonus tile. It does a lot of intriguing stuff. It's a very simple game. It looks intimidating to some people because you see all these little different tiles. But I've showed this to my other game group, and they fell in love with it, especially my friend who's big into penguins, and she's got a penguin tattoo. And there's like the penguin meeples, so she was really excited about that. Yep. It's a very, very simple game. It's very well produced with the great components and stuff like that. Honestly, if I had to choose between these two games, I would pick New York Zoo 10 out of 10 times.
And now, you were the one who, I think, played Le Havre with me.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Now, we only played it a long time ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. So I know you're moving along the track. You know, you're leapfrogging. That determines the turn. And
you're going down that river because that's the time.
Yeah. And so the way this works is pretty simple. You're trying to get different types of resources. Similar to Agricola, you know, getting the different types of resources, refining them, selling them for points, or applying them to get buildings. Now, one of the cool things about it is that there's a slew of different, like, materials. I want to say, like, 8 or something. Yeah, and each of those has a double side to it, which makes it, like, the upgraded version of it. So, like, you could get, like, wood and then put it into charcoal. You can get clay and then build it into bricks.
Yeah.
And
build better
buildings into food or whatever.
In your area.
Right. Yeah, and so, again, you do have to feed your people in this. as with a lot of games in his style at that time.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to compare between. But one of the little subtle things that I don't know if you remember, the stacks of buildings.
Yeah, I remember the stacks of buildings.
You would shuffle them all up, and then you would deal them into 3 different columns, and then you put the columns in order of what's there. And so only the top card of each of those is available, which is a really fun idea, honestly. Like, that's a cool little way to balance stuff. Is that, like you're getting the cheapest out of all 3 of the piles, but if one of the piles got like a random building that was just pretty expensive and everything else was too, well then, that'll sit around for a little while you're dealing with all these others. It gives like a cool little immersive like replay value that randomizes a little bit instead of just being the same old thing again and again, which is something that doesn't always happen. Le Havre is really highly ranked for a reason.
It's a good game, yeah.
And it is about efficiency. That's what the game is all about.
Yeah.
Not so much satisfying combos, which I think New York Zoo has much better of.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is all about comboing in the best way possible. Whereas, Le Havre just works. It's just a smart little work placement game. Classic for a reason. I think we're going to have to break this down because...
I don't disagree.
Yeah, while I don't disagree with you for New York Zoo, that is probably my favorite of the 2 right now, I think we got to give it its fair chance.
Oh, no, I don't disagree, and we'll get that going. Ease of play, I think, is New York Zoo. It's
okay.
Because, honestly, that movement aspect is very simple.
Yep. Move 1, 2, or 3 spots.
1, 2, or 3 spots, and then you fill up your tile, and then if you have animals, you place them into the thing.
Yep.
Once you pass the breeding point, you get a baby, just put it in there, and you fill it, and you just get more tiles. That's all.
Well, everyone gets the babies.
Yeah, well, everybody gets it, but I'm just saying, if you fill a tile, you get more tiles. You just place it. It's basically just spatial awareness, where you've got to fit things where you can put it all in there to be the one to cover first. Le Havre has a lot of moving parts. It is a worker placement aspect, but then you have the time track, which is down the river.
Oh, and the fact that you can go to other people's buildings, too. That's really awesome. Sorry. I just remembered that right now as you were speaking. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. Go on.
No, I'm done.
All right, well, anyway. No, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that was just, like, a lot of the innovations that Le Havre did. But you're right. I mean, it's a combo-tastic puzzle for New York Zoo. But Le Havre kind of innovated worker placement in a way.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
So ease of play, I say, goes to
New York
Zoo. Replay value goes to Le Havre, because I don't think either one has an expansion, if I remember correctly. I know there's promos for Le Havre.
No, just the way the buildings lay out, that's really the big benefit to it.
Meaningful choice. Both of them have a lot of meaningful choice. You do have a lot of impact in New York Zoo on other people's strategy, because if you move it a certain point, and if someone's like specifically just needs a certain token, because it'll help them get closer to finish, because like if I do this and then that will make these things breed, and then I could do this and this, and so they're like, I just need them to move it a couple times, and I can see that and be like, you know what, I'm just going to move it here, because you're next in turn, which means you can't go the full 3 to get that piece for you. You have to stop 1 short, which screws you over.
Yep.
And I've seen it done. Also, I've seen it where like we move it way past it because I need that piece. So I'm hurting you by helping myself as well, because I'm picking up a piece I need and taking blocking you from getting to the piece you need, because it's going to take you a little bit to try to set that thing up to be back there.
Yeah.
And so that I do think there's a lot of good of that impacting other people's strategies.
Yeah. And there is a lot of there is a lot of
depth in Le Havre. A lot of it.
Yeah.
Both of them don't really have arbitrary choices that much. You're closer to getting into the AP more in Le Havre than you would in the New York Zoo. So it's just
you would give meaningful choice to New York Zoo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because the AP aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And now, as far as player interaction, again, you have much more player interaction in New York Zoo.
Yes.
By far.
Yeah, because of the way you're moving around that track.
Okay.
Both are fun to lose, honestly. I like both of them.
Mm-hmm. Because you lost both of them.
Yes, I have. I've won New York Zoo a couple times too.
Yeah.
Le Havre, I've only played the once, so.
Yeah. It's just a fun little puzzle, really. So the memorable moments is like when you finally get it. I remember very distinctly when we were all playing, and you guys were like, "Man, I had this engine, I had these animals," and you look over at my board, and I'm just like, I have like 6 spots left.
Yeah. But it also.
And they're all right in this corner.
And you're like, but also it kind of hurt you. You only had 6 spots left because you couldn't take any of the big pieces.
Right.
You had to make
push
sure
the game forward.
Yeah, you had to breed your animals where you can get like the extra pieces.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it really could. And then I remember you looked over and you saw it. It's like, huh, this L shape would fit perfectly in yours. Let's jump over that. Knowing that it's my turn next, it's like, there's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, I mean, but that definitely impacted me. All right, meaningful choice. And then I'm also going to give art and production New York Zoo.
Okay, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, those animal meeples are so good.
They're brilliant, and the art on it is really great. Nothing bad against. I mean, the art has some fun things like Uwe packaging or whatever it's shipping, or the SS Uwe. Or,
stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's really cool. But New York Zoo is really well done. Who did
Capstone, I believe?
Yeah, that explains why.
Yeah.
So then New York Zoo moves on. It will be going up against the Juggernaut Caverna, which is
no, it'll be going up against Feast for Odin.
Oh yeah, Feast for Odin. The other Juggernaut,
the bigger, the Juggerer of the Nodders.
All right, so
and our last one will be Patchwork versus Bonanza. There's one that I'm really hoping for right here. Here we go. You're picking first. Or not picking. You get to argue first.
I get Patchwork.
Let's go.
Honestly, I don't mind Patchwork. I think it's a fun little 2-player game. Honestly.
Oh, I love Patchwork.
You are more enamored with Patchwork than I am.
Patchwork.
I suck at Patchwork. I get negative scores when I play Patchwork because I don't get it. I like New York Zoo. I can get that spatial puzzle a lot better than Patchwork, and trying to move that little thing across where I can get my buttons to pay for things. It's just a pain in the butt.
Pain in the button.
I will say this though with Patchwork, pick your poison with this one because you have the original Patchwork. If you want to play one for 4th of July, get the Americana one. If you want to play one for Halloween, get the Halloween version. If you want to play one for Valentine's Day, get the Valentine's Day version. There's a Christmas version as well.
Yep, the Halloween version has got to be my favorite because instead of buttons, there's little eyeballs.
Yeah. So it's really neat how this one works because, again, like I said, you're doing this little track and you have to cross certain thresholds for every button you have in your quilt. They'll give you buttons to pay, but you're moving along a circle where all the little tiles are, and you're picking one, but you got to be smart because you can only go, 3 spaces, I believe?
Up to 3.
Up to 3, and then you have to pay the buttons for those, depending on, I can't remember exactly what it is.
Yeah, your turn is either you go up to 3 spaces and pay for the buttons by the patch, which also give you a certain number of time.
Yeah.
Whoever's furthest back gets to take their turn.
Yeah.
Or your other option is to jump to the space in front of your opponent, and they immediately will get, or you'll get one button for every space you've jumped.
Yeah. And so it's intriguing how that works. The spatial awareness of it too is really neat. It's like, oh, you really need that one, but I need to fill up all these spots. But look at the buttons on that one because that's going to give me, money to buy the next patch that I need. So it's kind of intriguing how you have to do all that. And I love the fact that for a 2-player game, it's got so much depth in it. Where you have to be smart how you play. And again, I try to play as smart as I can. I suck at this game. But when it goes into like our game immersion, it is fun to lose. I mean, because I am trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing, and I'm doing it wrong apparently. So I do like it. I honestly think Bonanza is a better game, personally. But again, taking my bias out of it.
Yep, that's true. I 100% think that as much as I really like Patchwork, and I don't want this to sound any... Patchwork is probably my second favorite on this entire argument list. By far. I love Patchwork, but Bonanza is like my number 2 for a reason.
There's a reason why it's still around.
Yes.
It just had, its 25th anniversary?
Yep, 25th anniversary last year.
They just reprinted it because Best Sobel wanted to do Dahlias.
Yep. And which we have, by the way. We have for sale, which is awesome. Beautiful, beautiful art. Anyway, I don't like flowers, so I don't care. But beautiful art.
Best Sobel
is a great artist.
Yeah.
And so, this is the game of bean trading and bean farming and wheeling and dealing beans, and it's so dumb. The theme is ridiculous. The art is not particularly amazing, but the game itself is one of the coolest negotiation games I've ever seen. You are negotiating who gets what bean. You're trying to press your luck a little bit by trying to build up your bean farms. You're just trying to go for more and more because the farther you get, the bigger your bean field, the more valuable it's going to be at the end of the round. But every single turn, you have a slew of choices that you have to get through before you're allowed to sell. And that first one is you must play the first card in your hand, which the hand can never change order.
Yep.
Love that. So you're forced to play whatever is in there. But since you're doing a lot of trading, if you don't like what's coming up, find a way to trade it. But you don't want to go empty-handed either. You can just donate to somebody if they're okay with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you don't want them to go, well, I mean, why would I ever trade you for anything if you're just going to give me everything, right? Whatever. What's the point of this? So you got to make it sound like it's way better than it is, which is very hard to bluff against if you have two stacks.
If I remember correctly, when you're taking a card, it goes to the back of the row of the hand.
No, it goes immediately planted.
Oh, it goes immediately planted.
Yes.
Okay.
So if I have a big field of chili beans and a big field of coffee beans, green beans, and then there's a harvest bean up there, and I see you want it, and I definitely don't want it. How do I play it off so you'll take it and not completely rip me off by doing it? Mm-hmm. I can say, oh, we'll just remember this for later. Here you go. You're a good guy. Go ahead. Or somebody could be like, well, I'll offer you like 3 chili beans for that. And then some people might say, well, I'll offer you 4 chili beans if you don't accept that offer. And then just completely derail everything. I love the negotiation that this game leads to. Because then after that happens, once you play either your first, you have to play your first card in line. You may play your second card. Then 2 cards get revealed. You have to wheel and deal those. You can choose to them go immediately into your field, or you can trade them off. Then finally you draw 3 cards that go to the back of your hand, and then you look at them, and then decide if you want to sell. Like, that part is so good.
That's what I remembered. Is the 3 cards are the ones that go in the back of your hand.
Because you play a card, then you get up to 2 more cards, then you get 3 cards guaranteed, and then you're like, I mean, it's only 4 turns till I get to that other chili bean.
Yeah.
I could probably pull that off. And then just every little ounce, encourages you to press your luck, encourages you to, keep pushing, because you're like, man, I can get so many more coins from this. Ooh, do I want to do it? It's just such a riot. It plays 3 to 7 players, which is huge.
That is one of...
Mind
you, that's the only one you want to play with 7 players, because if you play any of these other big ones, no.
Oh, God, no. I mean, it's not like the shortest game in the world. A lot of these roll and writes are shorter. I mean, even New York Zoo is probably short. Maybe. It might be shorter. But it's phenomenal game. I will very much argue for this to move on.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but let's just break it down to be fair, take our bias, because we really do love Bonanza a lot.
Art and production, Patchwork.
Yeah. Ease of play.
I'm going to say Bonanza.
I'm going to say Bonanza just because the wheeling and dealing.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you got people who are coming over from something like Pit, they're going to be able to figure this one out. I know a lot of people that love Pit.
Yep.
Replay value.
Oh. Neither?
Yeah.
No, I mean...
Bonanza does have some
Bonanza has the scaling.
Yeah.
It plays up to 7 players. Patchwork is only 2, and that's it.
And then the expandability with Patchwork is it's the same game, it's just different skins.
Well, no. They have a lot of different things, like specialty beans and different fields. And
no. I'm talking about, for Patchwork. It's the same game, but different...
right.
It's not any, expansions. It's just the same game with... whatever, pick your flavor.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, Bonanza does have a number of expansions.
So
they're all kind of crazy. Yep.
Meaningful choice. I'm gonna come back to this one. Game immersion. Honestly, I think that is Bonanza.
Yep.
Hands down. So.
I do think meaningful choice would go to Patchwork because it is a very strategic game.
Yeah, it very much is. And so, but it's 3 to 2. Game immersion.
Yep.
Yeah, it's 3 to 2 because we went ease of play.
Yep.
Replay value and game immersion, Bonanza, meaningful choice in art production, Patchwork.
Yep.
All right, Bonanza
moves on.
All right, so let me just...
And that was it for our quarterfinals of the eliminated games. We have Le Havre, we have Patchwork, Patchwork Doodles, and Bargain Hunters. Let's see how the viewers rated those games.
So the first one eliminated was Bargain Hunter. They had 1% of the vote, which shocks me a little bit.
Well, it's also like a hidden gem, too.
It really is. It's a good game. I do enjoy it.
And I think a lot of people who are any at all familiar with Uwe Rosenberg games probably aren't like the biggest trick takers, right?
Yeah,
And
pretty
that's
much.
not really what he's known for.
Patchwork Doodle also had 1% of the vote.
Yep.
What is the next one we have here? Le Havre. This is going to annoy a lot of people that this got eliminated.
Sorry about that.
And then the last one was Patchwork, which is also going to annoy a lot of people. But Le Havre here had
5% of the
5% of the vote. Interesting. Yeah. I knew the other two were going to be higher. And then finally, Patchwork had 14% of the vote.
Yep. Cool.
Which was looks like it's our second highest vote getter outside some of the picks out there. In fact, it is the second highest out of all of them, so that's saying something.
Yep. Yeah, Patchwork. People love that Patchwork. And honestly, if it wasn't against Bonanza...
Oh, yeah.
That's... I finally met somebody who didn't like Bonanza.
Who?
He thought it was okay, at best. Yep. All right, going into the quarterfinals, we have Feast for Odin versus New York Zoo.
And also we have Caverna Cave Farmers versus Bonanza. This is going to be a fun semifinals.
That's right. Here we go. You'll be arguing first.
And I get New York Zoo again.
Okay.
This is going to be a tough one because honestly, meaningful choice is Feast for Odin, hands down.
Let's not claim that yet.
Honestly, I think for me personally, I would pick New York Zoo over Feast for Odin. Not saying Feast for Odin is not a good game. It was a fine game. I really enjoyed it. It's probably out of the four, it's probably the least likely that I would play again anytime soon, just because of the time constraints with this one.
Sure.
How many moving parts are going in this one? I gotta dabble over here or dabble over there, and again, it's kind of like Caverna's argument. You don't want to be a jack of all trade, master of none. You kind of want to dabble on just a few things, just not the farming unless you want to feed your people. Make sure you pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
But New York Zoo, it's just every time I play it, it just goes down like gangbusters because it's that spatial awareness, especially since I play with a bunch of people like us in my other group who have like that puzzle aspect of it. So it's more likely to get to the table than say something like Feast for Odin, just because of how big and intimidating Feast for Odin actually is. Meaningful choice, I think, like I was saying, I think it is Feast for Odin, but where it does get knocked for Feast for Odin, you don't really have AP or arbitrary choices really messing you up too much in New York Zoo. Sometimes, okay, I got to take a tile that I can't really... It doesn't work too well with what I need to do, but it isn't going to hamper me either, because if I take this tile, I'm almost done over here, so I can fill up... now I'm closer to the breeding aspect of it, which means will allow me to finish this up over here. Well, I needed that 6-piece there. Can't get to that one. I'll take this 4-piece here, and now I can go get a 2-piece over there once I finish my thing. So there's ways to mitigate all that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So you're not basically forced into an arbitrary choice, because there's ways to mitigate that sort of stuff. Game immersion for me, New York Zoo is hands down a much better interaction. There was times when we were playing Feast for Odin, we weren't talking. We were just all looking down at our board, looking up at the main thing and seeing where I could go. Oh, someone went over there. Now looking down at my board. Okay, now what can I do and stuff like that. So you're trying to figure out what your stuff is, and you're not really role-playing or trash-talking. You're just... The only time you really hear anything is like, why'd you go there? I needed to go there, or something like that. But all four of us were concentrating on different aspects of Feast for Odin. It was very rare we were competing for like the different spots. That we may have been competing for certain tiles or something like that, but it wasn't too much. Really interaction too much. That one is a lot of the multiplayer solitaire game, because you're just concentrating on being as efficient as possible with your stuff. There's so much stuff on there, you're not really going to get blocked off too much. But with New York Zoo, there's certain things that we talked about where you can get blocked and moved and stuff like that. And for me personally, I think the art production's much better in New York Zoo, just because of how many different meeples that they give you, or animeeples, in this game. So for me, I think New York Zoo should move on, but let's hear what you guys say for Feast for Odin.
All right. Well, Feast for Odin. I thought of an apt comparison, is that in Feast for Odin, it's really kind of one of those things where it's less about who wins and more about do you succeed in the story you're trying to tell. Like, and I compare it kind of like to Western Legends.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons we like Western Legends is the fact that it's absolutely sandbox, and you have just as much of a chance of winning playing poker and visiting the saloons than you do, robbing trains or like going around and digging through mines and all that stuff. There's a lot of different aspects to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Feast for Odin is neat on that aspect because that's where I think it does actually win game immersion, is because there is times where it's like, wow, at the end of the game, it's like, Daniel, did you build that Viking ship that you were aiming for? Like, did you get like the one that everyone's gonna be marveling at? Oh, did you fight this guy? Did you win, this battle? Like, oh wow, you've built an empire upon your feast. Your Odin's gonna be very happy upon, and like, it's less about whether you got more points and whether you were able to succeed at the aspect you are aiming for.
Yeah.
That I feel it wins in game immersion, whereas we're all building the zoo.
Yeah.
But really, those tiles don't make sense as far as the zoo goes. It's like, yeah, you're breeding animals, but you're really trying to overcapacity animals and then empty it just to fill spaces.
Yeah, no, I
That's
get
kind of what you're doing, right? It's a great puzzle, but I don't feel like it feels like a zoo for me.
Yeah.
And so even though you have those fun moments, like and pretty fun moments and memorable moments, I feel like everyone's aspect leads to more memorable for Feast for Odin. With that being said, that sandboxy nature, I feel like that's very arbitrary.
Mm.
Like, because you won't know until like 10 games in whether you're gonna have a meaningful choice or not. As far as replayability, that goes to Feast for Odin for me. I feel just because it's there's no way you can play all of it in one sitting, no matter what. So ease of play, art and production, 100% agree with New York Zoo. But meaningful choices where this is really going to matter. While I feel like game immersion and replay value is definitely Feast for Odin, I feel like meaningful choice is much more meaningful in New York Zoo. 100%. So I agree with you that I should move on. But now we're going to go into our next round, Caverna versus Bonanza. You ready, Daniel?
I'm ready.
Let's go. You'll be arguing first. Now draw from the Cup of Doom.
I am getting Caverna.
All right.
So this is going to be a tough one because these are some really good games.
These are both very good. Yeah.
I love Bonanza so much.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just think Caverna is just slightly better as a game per se because there is a lot of moving parts in there. The wheeling and dealing and like game immersion for me, hands down, is Bonanza. But Caverna has a lot more meaningful choice in there because you have to be smart how you play this game. We mentioned it earlier.
Yep.
You can't be a jack of all trades. You have to master something or
a
couple things. You want to make sure you feed your people. If you're going to work in your cave, you better do it well. If you're going to do stuff in your like battling and push your luck on that aspect of it too, you got to be proficient with that. You got to be smart with how you play this game. And for a worker placement game that's what, 2008 or something like that?
Something like that.
Really older. It still has a lot of depth to it. Yeah. And it's quite amazing how much depth it is to it compared to some of the worker placement games that are coming out now. Yeah. So this one has more depth than, say, something right above my shoulder over here, Fallout Shelter, the board game.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a worker placement. It has a lot of depth to it. And then it changes as you're playing because you don't know what's going to come up. It always changes every gameplay what the new worker placement spots are going to be, or what new abilities or something that's going to happen in there. Some sort of power you get from, fighting the trolls or goblins that are coming after you.
Yeah.
So it has a lot going on to it, so you got to be smart at how you play. I mean, you have to be smart about how you do Bonanza, but it's more about the wheel and deal aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like I said, game immersion for sure for me is Bonanza, but I think, and maybe ease of play, but like the art production and Caverna is really good. The meaningful choice is really good. The replay value there, because you're not going to see everything in every game. It's going to take you a few games just to see what you get in the base box. And that's not to mention all the expansions that came out for it. All the promos if you want to hunt them down.
Yeah.
There's just a lot for Caverna that I honestly think, as much as I hate to say it, because I love Bonanza so much, it should move on.
Well, I'm going to argue for Bonanza, and I do agree with you that the game immersion, that's where it is top notch, hands down. And I will give art and production to Caverna because, while it's not amazing art and production, it is better than just a handful of cards.
Yeah.
Although those cards, Amigo really knows how to print cards.
Yeah, they do really nice with cards.
What they have is really good, but the art is just cheesy, and as much as I love it, it's not pretty.
No.
But that's part of the love for it. It's like it's the reason people like pugs. They're ugly, but they're kind of like a cute ugly. You know what I mean? That's my argument for that. As far as meaningful choice, let's do replay value.
Okay.
Significantly for that, there is a lot of expansions for Bonanza. There is. And there's a lot of different versions and stuff. But Caverna and Agricola, between the two, it's not even close. Like, just new decks, new packs of cards, all that stuff. That's a very common thing. However, ease of play, Bonanza.
Yeah.
And meaningful choice. That's where it boils down, because now it's 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Right. Meaningful choice is there more meaningful choice in Caverna with all of the slew of different options and there's no real bad choice to do? Or is the wheeling and dealing? Impact on other players' strategies, that's definitely worker placement kind of blocks spaces, sure.
Yeah.
But really you're impacting other players directly in multiple aspects, multiple facets in Bonanza. Arbitrary choices, you kind of can in Caverna. You kind of can. AP is a thing.
AP, no, I'll give you the AP aspect of it. Yes.
Sure.
The arbitrary choice is not really, because you have to be efficient with how you use your workers. You only have so many workers.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to go to that spot because it makes no sense for me to go to that spot.
Right.
Okay, this is a much better spot if I go here. It's not a great spot, but it's still a better spot than the one over there. So it's not really arbitrary choices. You do have choices. The AP I will give you because we did play with someone with AP.
Yeah, and it was excruciating. So that means meaningful choice is a push.
Yeah, but the other thing too about the impacting other players, I want to go back to you mentioning how like the wheeling dealing, that's a big thing that can impact. It does, but it could also be a negative too, because there could be that one person that's just like, no, why would I trade these 3 beans to you if you're only giving me that one measly bean?
Right, but they're not going to get a deal, and they're going to be the ones who stuck planting over the stuff that they have already. You can't not do that. So, like say in Monopoly, you could always do the holdout strategy and just wait it out and just assume it's going to pay off.
Yeah.
And not have fun with the trading. But you can also lose pretty easily that way. That's kind of the idea. It's very, very difficult not to, right? Bonanza just leads to that. It's like I love it when every time when I teach new players how to play Bonanza and we're all playing, and then I throw I'll give you a chili bean not to take that deal. Just flat out. And everyone's like, you can do that? Why not?
Okay.
You can accept that. I feel like I'm willing to call it a push.
All right, we'll call it a push. Going to the vote right now. Pulling it up. Bonanza is at 6% of the vote. And
Caverna is
9.
9, so more than that. So Caverna moves on, fair and square.
All right, Bonanza. And see, this is why it's important you guys vote.
Yep, that's right. So if you're pushing for Bonanza as hard as we were, then too bad.
Yep, so number 2, Caverna, moves on to face the number 6, New York Zoo.
By the way, I don't know if you needed it, or if you knew this, but your computer needed restarting.
Oh, here we go again.
He has a pop-up. It's like, oh, you need to restart right now. We'll do that later, not podcast app. You need to calm yourself. All right, anyway. Now into our finals. We're going... Oh, wait, no, let's talk about... What was the votage for the ones that got eliminated?
So... Our number 1 seed, Feast for Odin, was also the number 1 vote getter at 26%, and we just talked about Bonanza at 6% of the vote. Yep. So that's interesting. It always needs to. Yeah, no, it has to deal with my antivirus. And of course, he has to bring it up in the middle of the podcast.
Yeah, it's, well, In my defense, I didn't bring it up. Your app did.
You could have just pointed it out instead of mentioning it on the podcast.
No, but that wouldn't have been funny.
No.
Yeah, no, I thought it was hilarious. All right, and then Feast for Odin. How much percentage did that get?
I said 26%.
26%. More than a quarter of the people.
See, he's so worried about making a joke on the podcast about a pop-up coming up.
I am bringing this back up to emphasize the absurdity that we just voted off one that only a fourth of our viewers voted for, and everything else, or more than a fourth actually, of our viewers voted for that. Well, if you weren't so worried about making a pop-up joke on my screen here, you would have heard me say it earlier. Pop-up jokes are some of the best kind of jokes. No. Yeah, it's like knock-knock jokes, you know. No. Speaking of knock-knock. No. Come on, move it. Let's move it. Let's go. We had a long enough break. Yes. Let's keep going. I'm not playing this game. No, just say who's there. Knock-knock. Go ahead. All right, someone from the audience, because then I'm going to have to keep going. One of our listeners, either Crate, Illuminous, go ahead and say who's there. Knock, knock. Ready to go. And yes, I'm waiting, and I don't think they're feeding into it. Yes, we're doing that. Thank you, Crate. Our finals is there. So let's get into New York Zoo versus Caverna for our finals. Daniel wants you to put him out of his misery by this. Now, this side, we do not flip the coin. We do not pull from the Cup of Doom. We break this down category by category. To take our bias out of it. Our finale is New York Zoo versus Caverna. You ready, Daniel? Now you're making the podcast take longer. I'm okay with this. I'm ready. Send your hate mail to Daniel at everydayboardgames.com. Gotta make sure you don't come with caffeine anymore. Alright. So, is there any categories amongst those that are immediately obvious? You didn't explain the rules how we do this. I did explain the rules. No, you didn't. So we break it down. We don't take sides. We have the 5 criteria, and we bring it up. I did. If you weren't too distracted by my joke an hour ago, then you would have known this, sir. All right. Anyway, so we have the 5 criteria. Let's break it down. Is there any that are immediately obvious to you? On New York Zoo, ease of play. Yes, I agree with that. Ease of play goes to New York Zoo. And art and production, New York Zoo. Art and production, New York Zoo. Okay. Well... Yeah, it's much easier to see some. Yeah. The problem with Caverna and Agricola when they came out, they're not colorblind friendly. They're not colorblind friendly, true, but they do also have the animeeples as well. They do also have the fencing. They have a lot of the resource bits. You know, have a lot of the same good wooden qualities to it. Yes, it does have a lot of the same. But again, graphic design and colorblind friendly has always been a knock. New York Zoo doesn't have that problem. The one thing I have against New York Zoo, though, and I do think that this is a legitimate knock to it, is that the board has those recesses for the tile pieces, and the way that it tells you first off to shuffle up the pieces, to throw them in the box and mix them around, and then pull them randomly, and that layout is weird. But then also those weird notches into the board are completely unnecessary and honestly look really weird to me. Yeah, they're fine. They're just like if the board gets knocked, they stay in their little spaces. Trust me, I've seen it. Not really. They do it a lot better than if they didn't have those notches. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just, there's something about it that I honestly... I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying, like, I don't think it's like that clear cut as you... Oh, no, it's again, it's not colorblind friendly. I struggled when we played Caverna because there's certain things like, oh, is it this or is it this? And I had to keep asking. Sure. That's not fun if I have to keep asking if something. It's like that. What is that Diamond Rush game that we were playing from Haba, where you're trying to get like the little diamonds off? Hammer Time. Hammer Time. It was a struggle. Is that blue or is that purple? What is that? And it's the same thing with Caverna. Yeah. And so that's my big knock of Caverna. It's just, and the same thing with Agricola. Feast for Odin's not that bad. They're a little bit easier. The blues and the purples are a little Right. But yeah, no, I think. Art and production. New York Zoo. That's fine. Okay, so ease of play, art and production. Replay value. Very clearly Caverna. Yeah, there's more expansions. You can handle almost as many players. And it's just an expansive number of players. Caverna's 4, right? Or is it 5? Yes. 4 or 5. It might be 5, actually. Because I think New York Zoo is 5. Yeah. It's something to that effect. But it's not much
It's not much different.
I mean,
New York Zoo plays a lot quicker than Caverna.
I don't think it plays that much quicker. I mean, it is quicker.
No.
Caverna can be played fairly quick. I mean, it's not like light and day, but I do think it's...
No. Mm-mm. No, I'm saying replay value is Caverna just because of all the expandability. Right. But I think New York Zoo, the scaling...
Fair enough.
I think that's the only one that will get to New York Zoo because when we go to like the minimum number of plays for the full experience, if you play New York Zoo once, it's going to be the same game every time you play it. Caverna changes as you go.
Yeah, I agree with that. Cool. All right, so then we have game immersion. Again, because of the open field nature of it, no pun intended. Like it just feels like a sandbox game. It really does.
Caverna?
Yeah. Because game immersion, I don't feel like you're building a zoo. I don't feel like
I get that.
mechanisms justify the...
But again, we took all that out. The three criteria we go with is the game fun to lose, the player interaction, and the memorable moments.
Yes.
Both games lead to really good memorable moments. Like I mentioned, our recently passed away friend Lyncho, his whole thing was fighting those goblins, and he had a blast doing it, and we egged him on a lot.
Oh yeah.
We're doing our own thing. The player interaction again with the egging on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
there's not much table talk for anybody for either of the games. But sure, okay.
Both are really fun to lose. I enjoy playing both these games.
Yeah, you can have fun no matter how you play.
Yeah, because like me, I've always mentioned this before. I'm a chaos player. I don't care.
You are.
I don't care how things work. If I find something, I want to latch on it and see if it's going to work or not.
Yes.
Whether I get my butt handed to me in a game, it's fine. I wanted to see if this works. It didn't work. Oh well. I'll try again later sometime.
Right.
Sometimes it wins, sometimes it doesn't, but it's fun to try different aspects of the game. And that's why I like, for me, like Caverna, it is fun to lose because there's just different things I can do and latch on. And okay, that didn't work last time. Let me try this version, or let me do it this way. You know what? I'm not even going to concentrate on the cave. Let me just work on the farm and the outside of stuff, and I'll have my couple basic rooms. But so stuff like that. And New York Zoo is fun to lose, but in all honesty, it's just more of a spatial thing. You're like, oh man, if I had a couple more turns, it's fine. Player interaction, I think there's more in Caverna just because of the worker placement spots. The only other player interaction you really get is when you're getting at the back end of New York Zoo, and you're like, again, you mentioned it, hey, you need that spot. Let me just push you way over here. And now you got to wait a couple more turns to mitigate that. So I honestly think game immersion goes to Caverna.
Okay. So it brings it down to meaningful choice again.
All right. Impact on other player strategy. Both have really good impact. I think there's more impact in New York Zoo when it comes to the ratcheting effect, because Caverna, again, we talked about it, there is the ability to pivot.
Right.
Because of the worker spots, especially when you get into later game, when more spots are opening.
And not only that, if I take a tile, because there's only like one of every tile type, if I take a tile, you are never getting that tile, ever. And the worker placement spots rehash every time.
And not just that, also, if you take that tile, I may have to pivot to get a smaller tile and have to go and find a piece. I got to make sure I breed my animals well. This way I can get one of those extra pieces to take up the spot that you took that tile away from me.
Right.
So I get that, where that is much more in depth than, say, Caverna.
Yeah.
Depth of strategy, tactics, or skills. Now this is Caverna.
That would be New York Zoo.
Because the worker placement aspect of it, your strategy's fine, but you're all playing the same game. It's just whoever gets to the piece first.
Right.
The thing is, with the New York Zoo, you have to be smart, and this is one of the big things. You have to be very proficient with what you're doing. Again, I'm beating the dead horse here. You can't be a jack of all trades. You have to master certain things. If it's the farming, then you're going to do the farming. If you're going to do some of the cave dwelling, you need a farm on that too. You got to make sure you're making enough stuff to feed your workers, or else you're going to get penalized. You got to be smart about how you do things, whereas you're only doing a tactile or puzzle in a sense. there's ways to mitigate it. Okay, you took me that, and I got to get this piece. Well, now this crossed me to this threshold, so I got all these bread. Let me take this piece. Hey, look, I just matched the 6 piece you took away from me. So it's interesting what it does, but I just think the strategy in Caverna is just much more there because of all the worker placement spots. You have to be efficient how you do it. You better hope someone doesn't take the spot that you want, but there's ways to pivot, so you have to be smart in how you pivot as well. So
Sure.
that's why I'm saying like the strategy and the skill there is a little bit more in depth.
Are you saying both of those then, Caverna?
Depth of strategy, tactics, or skills? Caverna.
Okay.
For me, meaningful choice, New York Zoo, the arbitrary choice AP that's a knock on Caverna.
Yes.
So I think that would mean New York Zoo wins meaningful choice for the impact and the arbitrary choices.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree?
I agree. So that means New York Zoo wins it.
That is impressive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's an impressive game. Honestly, it just proves the fact that, it's not just about, oh, I have the ability to go to all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally, a simple strategy game can be a more meaningful experience sometimes than that. Now, will it be more of like an immersive experience? Not always. Like, I mean, I would rather play some of the other games than this. Like, if we played Seventh Continent, I'd rather play that than New York Zoo, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking for different things when that happens, and by our criteria, New York Zoo wins it.
And just barely. That was a pretty sound argument for everything.
That was very, very close. Well, with that being said, congratulations to New York Zoo as being the #1 Uwe Rosenberg game. And remember, send your hate mail to Daniel at everydayboardgames.com if you disagree with our judgment. But please provide reasons. By all means, comment down below. Like, if you really disagree with us, and that's totally fine. Comment why. Arguing is totally cool on YouTube because it's what the algorithm likes. So, post all your hate messages right down there. That's totally cool with us. With that being said, we'll justify our reasoning if we need to. We want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you ever want to join us on one of our live episodes, you certainly can, like our friends Luminous or Creative Chaos or anybody else who joined us in our live episodes today. You can join us at twitch.tv/everydayboardgames and be sure to follow us on there so that way you'll be notified when we turn live.
As well as all video re-uploads can be found on YouTube under youtube.com/@everydayboardgamespodcast. And if you like what we do, there are 3 things you can do to help us grow on that platform. Subscribe if you're not, like the video, and comment down below and tell us your thoughts on the subject. As well as all audio versions can be found on most podcast platforms under Everyday Board Games Podcast. This includes Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, Podbean, and now Apple.
And if you ever want to contact us directly, not including the email that I brought up earlier, you can email us directly at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. Whether you want to say hi, give ideas for future episodes, or possibly enter in future contests. Email us again at everydayboardgames2020@gmail.com. With that being said, I've been your host, Daniel.
And I've been your host, Daniel.
And we want to thank you for listening to Everyday Board Games.
Remember, every day is a good day for board gaming.